Hi, welcome to Astrology for Gain Traders. My name's Olga Morales, and today I'm just going to do a quick presentation on the eclipses in the lunar eclipse in March and the huge solar eclipse in April. So let's get started. Um, okay, now, what for me personally, looking at this lunar eclipse coming up on the 25th of March, what concerns me in this alignment is you can see that this is a 90-degree dial. Okay, and you can see because the sun and the moon are in an eclipse, a lunar eclipse, they're in opposition on this dial. They all come together. They look like a conjunction. But across the dial, you can see the planet Uranus. So that's 45 degrees away or 135 degrees, which is the eighth harmonic. So looking at this as a cosmobiologist, this is a concern to me because how often would this happen with an eclipse? Because I wanted to have a look back because the planet Uranus is often associated with shocks and also earthquakes and electrical storms. So it's quite a significant planet to look at in terms of being involved with the lunar eclipse. Usually, the eclipses have important times with earthquakes anyway. I mean, if you look at the work of Safariel, he talks about the connection between eclipses and earthquakes that was studied for thousands of years. So we need to look at those. And this one in particular has got this eighth harmonic aspect with Uranus. So let's have a look. What I did was I went to look at to find another eclipse that occurred with this same formation. It wasn't exact, it was only a few days out, but this is lunar eclipse on the 6th of August 2009 had this same alignment. You can see that Uranus is on the opposite side. It's only 2 degrees out. We allow 2 degrees maximum. And here the actual lunar eclipse was in a fixed sign. Okay, and it was in August. You can see the difference. But I wanted to have a look. So what I do, I always put these eclipses on solar maps. It's called astrocartography. And when we look at where it is on the map, it was really astonishing to me. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken out all the other planets and I've just left in Uranus because that's making this eighth harmonic aspect to the full moon, to the eclipse. Okay, and then what I've done is if you look at the lines on the chart, you can see where I've actually put the midpoint between the moon and Uranus and the sun and Uranus. So this gives us these divisions on this chart that you wouldn't get normally if you didn't put midpoints on. And to my astonishment, when I was doing this research, is that if you look at the lineups, you can see that there were some really significant earthquakes in 2009. Okay, I've only put the biggest ones. So there was a huge one in Italy. If you remember, that was in an area called Aquila. It was a 6.3. That was in April. There was one in Afghanistan, which was 5.2, but it had a lot of casualties. That was on April 16th. There was a Sumatra, another one. This was 7.6 in September. Samoa, there was one 8.1, which is huge in September, and there was one in Costa Rica as well. So, and you can see where the lines line up to these areas. Look at the Italy one. The one here, I mean, there would have been, I mean, as everyone says to me, Olga, there are earthquakes all the time. Yeah, they are, but not those really significant ones. And for us to research if this actually works, we have to look back. Okay, so I always look back to see if this method is accurate enough for me to make forecasts with. You can see that it's definitely going through Afghanistan here. Obviously, in Sumatra, we got the lines going through Indonesia here exactly. Samoa in this middle part here exactly, okay, on the midpoint, and Costa Rica, you can see that as well in here. So to me, it gives me confidence to have a look. So because this is similar to the one that we're having now on the 25th of March, I wanted to have a look at sorry, I found another one as well. This was in 2001. So these same pattern, and we know what happened in 2001, but also, when I put it on the map, I did find all the earthquakes that were around because, it just takes time to do the research. But what really got me when I was looking at it, it was going right through Adelaide and South Australia. And we had a 7.1 earthquake, a really rare one, on the 12th of December 2001. And you can see the line going straight through Adelaide there. So, this gives me confidence to continue with the research. Obviously, this is what I'm looking at now. In the next few days, we're going to have this lunar eclipse on the 25th of March with Uranus again on the 8th harmonic. So, does it mean that it's time there might be an earthquake? Yes, I would say possibly, but it doesn't have to happen in that day. You can see from the previous events, there were ones in April and there were ones in September. So, but these are the areas that are highlighted again, and they're very similar to that when they in 2009 but they're in opposition. They're swapped over, but the lines are still there. I mean, I've just highlighted this is interesting to me because it's all going through Iceland at the moment, where that's a lot of eruption happening there, a lot of activity, and they all culminate there. Okay, again, Italy is in like Europe, also the Middle East and Iran here, India, Kathmandu, parts of China as well. Indonesia's highlighted again. This time it's coming closer and it's going right through New Zealand. The Pacific Ocean again, so that would be like in Hawaii above there. And the US, again, in this area here, looks like Texas and Houston and this part, and Florida, parts of Mexico. Now, I haven't put in everything. You'll be able to look at this when you're watching the video, but it's very intriguing. So, um, we'll see what happens if this actually works. I like working like this, looking back at the alignments and then saying, well, they've done it in the past, so there's a probability that these are the areas where we might see more seismic activity, especially if you know that they're on fault lines, because there's more chance for that to happen. I mean, the ones in Australia are quite rare. This one we can see there's a bit of activity near Perth here, so it'd be interesting if we see something again in that area in Australia. Okay, now the next slide is I always like to look at the old style of looking at these eclipses. They had a system where they would use the decans to give them information about what to expect for the eclipse. So it's in Raphael's mundane astrology book if you want to look it up. And this one in particular, this lunar eclipse is ruled by the moon. So you can see I've got it up here. The moon's here, the moon. And anytime you get the ruler in a decan to do with the moon, it has to do more with the women and the female, but also it's got a lot to do with weather. So this one, it says that provokes furious storms of hail. Okay, so it'd be interesting if we see that anywhere. And also, the decans are connected with the cards, the tarot cards, especially the court cards, the minor arcana specifically. And that was a system that was developed by the Golden Dawn. Okay. And I like it. I like looking at it because I think that the images have a lot to do. They've created the images to link in with the decans, which are ruled every seventh one is ruled by another planet, okay, in an order. I'll go more about this in my book, okay. But anyway, that's the lunar eclipse. So let's have a look at the solar eclipse. This is the big one that's over the United States. Hasn't been like they've got a lot of activity. I've put it in my Alms Planetary Watch. They hadn't had all this activity, but then the next 36 years they're going to be having a lot of eclipses over the United States. The other thing I have to point out is that there's a moon perigee just before, one day before. Okay, so it's almost a supermoon, but not quite. I mean, the definition of a supermoon that it's got to be within that one day, according to Richard. So Richard Nolly, but still that's close enough. So that's still an intensity, and it's at the degree 19 degrees is at the degree of the sun's exaltation. So you would think that's a very powerful degree to have an eclipse in, but when we put it into the decans, that makes a little bit of, oh, okay. I put this up. This is a geodetic chart. Okay, so geodetic uh, uh, astro maps start at 0 Aries, pretty much just at Greenwich. So they use Greenwich as a point of starting the zodiac, and we go every 30 degrees, and we move across the world. Okay. So some people say, well, why pick it there? And but there is a theory behind it, and I sort of, because Fario was using this as a book. He did a book just on geodetic equivalence, it's called. But there is a theory. The theory is that they believed that the Great Pyramid was a pointer, like a compass in a way, but also pointing to the fixed star Alcyon, which is the center of the Palladian star system. And they believed at that time that that was the center of our galaxy. It was like that we revolve around this central star. Okay. And so that's like, 30 degrees away from Greenwich in a way. So I can understand why maybe that's why they chose that location. That might have been the theory behind it, because this is an ancient thing. But anyway, when you look at it, it makes a lot of sense when, I've been doing a lot of work with geodetic equivalents for a long time, since I got into GAN, because of Safariel, so everyone reads Safariel's book. So you go down his pathway of research, and it makes sense when you look at it. A lot of things that happen globally, it's interesting. Have a look at this, for example. This is a solar eclipse. This stood out to me. So you can see the moon. This is on the descendant. So going right through Beijing. Okay, because it's just in before we go into Leo. Okay, but then when we go over, it's actually rising over Washington. So you can see why Washington and Beijing are always at each other, because they're exactly 180 degrees apart on the globe for this to happen. And that's your enemy, like technically, even in your chart, that's your enemy. So you can see how this is significant. So to me, geodetically, this eclipse is going to have some China, United States energy. Okay. So we'll probably see more of that happening. And this solar eclipse, in terms of the decans, is ruled in the decan of Mars. Obviously, we've got Mars as the ruler of the whole area, but also it's to do with, obviously, Mars is a bit aggressive, so there's a war energy to it. But the actual key words for it, according to Safariel, oh no, Raphael, is imprisonment and sadness of some king, and the danger to death to him, the corruption of trees bearing fruit, and of things growing on the earth. And the card is established strength, success, harmony following a struggle. Now, last year when I did this, it was warning of the possibility, the eclipse is a possibility of the death of a queen. And we knew that happened. So this is saying something about a king. And when I look at King Charles' chart, he's got the Saturn by solar right coming to his son at 77 years of age. That was the same degree and combination that you know Gan died at 77 with that same Saturn to his son by solar arc. Okay, so that's like a death of a king. Okay, so it'll be interesting if astrology works in that respect. But yeah, it's not a nice eclipse for the king, because it's the sun. Okay, anytime the decan has a sun in it, if you look at the descriptions, it talks about the king, the monarch, or the president, or the prime minister, or someone in authority. So that's something to look at. I did include all these in my OMS planetary watch, so this is what I do every year. Now, the other thing is, I was interesting that we need to look at there's different ways of looking at eclipses. We can look at the nodal cycle, we can look at the Saros cycle, and we can look at the Metonic cycle. If we look at the Metonic cycle, which is 19 years, okay, the eclipse is at exactly the same degree, which is, this is what they used to make their calendars. They needed to know about this 19 years. All the cultures that use lunar calendars, this is what they look at, that 19-degree Metonic year. But look at this, so on the 8th of April in 2005, it was exactly there at 19 degrees. At the same time, though, Saturn was there square, okay, and the nodes are quite close because it was a total eclipse. But on that day, the day after actually, they got married. Prince Charles and Camilla, now they're king and queen. They tied the knot in a civil ceremony in Windsor. Okay, what does that mean? They're coming to their 19th year cycle, and when they got married, this Saturn was square. Okay, this is significant. There's something very significant happening with this. Okay, now, this was the solar eclipse again that I just showed you. See how, because it's the same, it's lighting up the same areas of um, the map, because this is based on the zodiac, right? So issues that were happening in April 2005, maybe in China, between China and the United States, might come up again because it's a repetition. And so I did have a quick look what was happening 2005, not specifically for United States and China, but there's a Hurricane Katrina happened then, okay, and that was all in the Texas and Florida. And then there was a Kashmir earthquake. There was a tsunami. So I might just move that. There was a Asian tsunami that happened afterwards in 2005. We still had the significant recovery efforts of that, and also in London there was the bombings, yeah, do you remember the bus bombing? Series of coordinated suicide attacks on London's public transport system. So that was 2005. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is that eclipses belong to a Saros cycle or family. And the one that we're having, the eclipse on the 8th of April, is part of Saros 139. And the Saros cycle starts off from the top, the North Pole, or sometimes, and it goes around and around and around thousands of years. And then there's I think it's 1,000, and I should have written that down, but there's between 70 to 72 eclipse belong to this family, and they snake around like the snake around the egg, the image. Um, but they move across. So it's 18 years, but there's an orb of 10 to 11 days. Okay, so over time, that 10 to 11 days becomes a factor, and what happens is, because it's that increment, it moves across the globe by almost 120 degrees. It's 115. So you can see here, this first one, number one, was in 18th of March. Okay. So then we add another 18 years and we get the 29th of March, and you can see that it's added on 11 days. And so the one that we're having now is another 18 years and 11 days, and it's the 8th of April, 2024. So there's a whole research on this, is that these um, might all have something in common. So if you look back at these times um, in the past, 18, now you know that Guyana had a financial timetable based on the 18 to 19 year and the nodal cycle. So it's very significant for research. If you want to go down there, I mean, I've done a lot of work on this. I teach about it a lot in my courses and my workshops, but I wanted to show you simplistically how amazing this cycle is. Okay. Um, and then after the third one, because it's come back, they line up pretty much on the same latitude, right? And longitude. And so sometimes it's almost, but this one's very amazing. This is amazing. So 54 years ago was 1970, and they almost exactly on the same area. Okay. So I've been telling people on Twitter, or X, I call it X now, what was happening in the 1970s for the United States. You can see actually this one was going right through Washington. So I think that was when Watergate was happening, if I'm correct. I don't know enough about all the history, but um, yeah, there was a solar eclipse in, this is what it looked like. So it was on the 7th of March, 1970. And again, I wanted to show you, sorry, I think I've gone somewhere. So 1970, there was a cyclone in the Ganges in Pakistan, the worst cyclone of the 20th century. There was an earthquake also in China. And in America, it was all women's rights, gay rights. The Vietnam had come to a close. Watergate scandal led to the resignation of Nixon. And then the United States, I think, pulled out, stopped direct involvement with the Vietnam War. And President Jimmy Carter grappled with the energy crisis, inflation, and the Iran hostage crisis. So that was happening in 1970. And look at the eclipse. I just put it up close. I zoomed in. You can see it going right through those areas. So if you want to comment on this video and tell me if you know something and help me with my research and add to my research, it'll be interesting because we're trying to see, do patterns repeat? You know, that's what GAN tells you to look at. Looking back at repetitions, the future's a repetition of the past. So yeah. Okay, so in 1970 as well, there was a hurricane in Texas. There were California wildfires, there were tornadoes in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas in May, winter storms in the United States, and floods as well, flooding Mississippi River as well. So now, the other thing I wanted to look at is on the 10th of April, we are going to have a Mars conjunct Saturn, which is, they're termed the two malefics, um, and coming together in Pisces. It's a difficult combination, but look at the midpoint. It's actually coming to the midpoint of Venus, Uranus, Moon, and pretty much Jupiter. We'll say they're all coming because they're coming together as well. This is intense, and again, I don't like it. So I like to put it in the charts because that, according to Eberton, that's like a Mars Saturn come together is destruction and death. I know it sounds very uh, difficult for me to say that, but they're the combination. You can't make those two together. You can't put your rose-colored glasses on. I don't know how to make it positive. I mean, it can be constructive building, but I don't like the fact that it's coming to them. Anytime Uranus is in the picture, things are not stable. They can collapse. So, yeah, shock waves. So, anyway, what I've done, I've put that Mars Saturn on the geodetic chart and you can see it running through. So we've got it coming over this part of the, in this, what sees this? That's the Atlantic, isn't it? And then we can see it going through India and on top of Russia, though, and then coming back up, going through. Sorry, I've got this panel in front of me that's annoying. I don't know how to move it. Okay, sorry, I'll just move it up here. Okay, and then you can see it coming through sort of in between New Zealand and our east coast of Australia. So that we could have some sort of storm. We get storms and could even actually. Fires maybe not so much because we're going into our autumn, but there might be something happening in that area. Um, and then it going through the United States, it's going right through the middle of here, through Mexico in the center part of the United States. So because it's in a Pisces, now because it's in Pisces, you can see that it's in the Pisces zone, and because we look at the squares, it's going to be in all the mutable signs. So it goes through the mutable area, which is India, pretty much. Comes through Australia because we're in this. This is the Virgo area, and then it will go into the Sagittarian area of the central part of the United States. So that's the other thing. You have to know your cardinal fixed immutable when you're doing this work, which is like, the basics. And then we are going to have a nice transit, which is the Jupiter conjunct Uranus, which, according to Eberton, is thank the Lord. So it can bring you sudden luck. Okay. They're two big planets coming together. They can stir up stuff. They can stir up the heavens. They can stir up the storms, the weather. And when I looked at my weather forecasting books, they can stir up weather patterns. Last time they were together was in 1941, exactly in Taurus, and it was at 25 degrees of Taurus. So now they're at they're at 21. So it's only 4 degrees of difference, and so you can be lucky on a personal level if you've got that activated in your chart. Okay, so have a look, and we know 1941 was quite difficult because it's the war time, and then um, America got into the war because of Pearl Harbor. So, but I don't know if I'm not saying it's going to go that way. It's just that's what happened. What I like to look at is that weather-wise, Jupiter Uranus is related to hurricanes, and like you can see, this is in 1941. You can see this is a declination chart, and you can see them coming together, Uranus and Jupiter, and then the sun comes through activating it, and that's when there were those storms, um, typhoon in the Philippines. There was one in the Pacific, and Philippines, and Hong Kong. The Great Atlantic Hurricane, that was in Bermuda and the east coast of the United States, and Typhoon Georgia. So this might be something that repeats again, because if we look at the declination chart, we're getting exactly the same energy. So to me, May can be quite significant in that respect for hurricanes if this pattern repeats. And that's where they are on the globe because they're in Taurus. You can see them going through the Taurus area. So we've got Iran, parts of Saudi Arabia in here. Then it will go through the Leo area. So we've got us going right through the center of Australia, and it comes back and it will go through the Scorpio area, which is on the west coast of the United States and San Francisco, and then it will go through there. What did I miss? Leo? Where's Aquarius? Oh, it'll be on this side. Oh no, it's in here. Sorry. Yes. So that's how you go. It goes through the cycle. It's right at the top, like the top of Canada. I'm not sure what's in here. It's in here. Oh, it's going through Nova Scotia as well. So, yeah, so that's what I like looking at these charts just to give you an overview. And that's it. I mean, I wanted to share that with you because I had put it all together, and I said rather than just putting up as a little post on Twitter, I'll do a bit of a spiel, which I do love doing. And I hope you've enjoyed that. And thanks for listening. And if you have any comments, let me know. Tell me what was happening in those years, and it helps for the research, and it helps you to learn how to use these cycles for your forecasting. Thank you.